So the next question is, um, which test cases are written first? Black box cases or white box cases? The black box test cases are written first because their test basis are the requirements. So there is no fixed rule. We can actually, the thing is, we have to put our, what we say, uh, a common sense here, that when to do what thing, right? The thing is, because user requirements are ready, right? User requirements are ready even before coding starts. User requirements comes even before coding starts or the real programming starts. So when you have user requirements, you can write your test cases. It's not about executing the test case. The question is very clear. It's saying when you start the writing the test cases, right? So it's whether you write the white box test cases first or black box test cases. So basically, black box test cases can be written because you know the requirements, so you can write based on the requirements and the scenarios. Whereas a for white box testing, coding part should be there, right? So once the coding is done, you can see those coding part, you see the detailed design and component specification, and then you do white box testing. Okay, it's like this. V model, generally they ask about the V model, read about it. But in simple language, what is V model? V model is when for each phase of the software development has um, parallel phase of doing testing as well, right? So for example, I'll show you just a minute. Let me show you this, the V model, where it has gone, this one. So understand it, when you have requirement, right? When you have requirement, checking it or requirement is there, parallelly you can write the accepting test cases, right? So actually business analyst can also write the accepting test cases. So when you have specifications, right, parallelly, you can write the system integration test cases, right? When you're going through the detailed design, then parallelly there will be a unit cases, right? So this is called V model. But read more about it. I'm not going through as of now to this, but if you Google it, you will get a lot of information about V model, and it's very good. We should know this thing. Okay, what is use case testing? I'm not going into that. These are like old questions. There are very few companies who do this kind of thing, but I will share this PPT to you guys. You can just go through it. I am just covering some more important questions. These they ask what is equivalence partitioning and what is boundary value analysis, right? So let's understand that thing. So I want to explain this because there are some confusion around this. So what is the difference between equivalence partitioning and boundary value analysis? So this is done for generally for the component testing, or when you check the field level testing, right? You're checking a particular field. So what happens is, um, let's say the example is to vote in India, the age should be uh, greater than, let's take an example, let's greater than 18 and less than 120, something like this. I am taking just random example that may be not true uh, in the real sense, but let's say there is a field, age field, which you have to fill, and this age field only accepts 18 to 120 as the age. Right now, you have to apply equivalence partitioning and boundary value analysis. So when you create the equivalence partitioning test cases, it is more of related to invalid at lower side, lower end, at lower side, then valid case, and invalid invalid value from above upper boundary. So there will be three cases, right? If you are following equivalence partitioning, right? If you are following equivalence partitioning, right, then there will be three cases. One is, let's say, 5, when you put the age as 5. One is in between this, so in between this, let's say 35, and one will be outside the boundary. So let's take, you can take 123. Okay, so age 5 will be lower side from the you know this value, right? Lower boundary, less than the lower boundary, and then in between, and then greater than 120. Whereas boundary value analysis is done on the boundary side only, right? So boundary value will be one down the lower boundary, the boundary itself, and one greater than that boundary value. Then same thing. So one, so it will be lower boundary and then higher side of the boundary. So one upper boundary, then boundary itself, the upper boundary itself, right? One greater than the upper boundary value, right? So how it will be? The same case, if I want to write boundary value cases for 18 to 20 range, so answer will be, there will be 17, 18. You will be checking with these values, 19, then 119, 120, and 121. So these 6 test cases you will be creating for boundary value analysis. Okay. So that's the difference between equivalence partitioning and boundary value analysis. Theory, I'm not covering the theoretical part. What is requirement traceability matrix? This is also important. So what is RTM? So RTM is, tracing the requirements and the test cases. It's like one requirement may have multiple test cases. So you can make it like this. This is my requirement, log into the application, and I have created 3 test cases, right? So this is traceability. You are tracing that, okay, test case 02 is related to requirement number 123. That is called requirement traceability. That's it. Simple language, that there will be requirement will be linked to the test cases, and test cases will be linked to the requirement. That is called requirement traceability matrix. People use Excel sheet for that, hyperlinks, linking from, one field to another field in the Excel sheets. Those, uh, you know, those are the ways to make requirement traceability documents. Okay, read about it. What is the difference between static and dynamic testing? So dynamic testing involves the execution of the component or system being tested, whereas static testing is more of, examining the whatever is the deliverables. So you do the reviews, you know, you do all the static analysis of the so test case review is also static testing. Test case review is one of the example of static testing, or the code review is also static testing. Okay, whereas dynamic testing is actually executing it. Your validation part comes under dynamic testing. Okay. What is test plan and what is the information that should be covered in it? A test plan is a document which describes the scope, approach of the testing, resources will what resources we will be using, schedule of the testing process, right? That all includes in the test plan. There are a lot of other things also included in test plan. Read about it. I'm not going into that. Um, but this is important question. So generally through this question, interviewer want to know that whether uh, your company is doing, whether you have done something on the test plan or not, whether you have seen those kind of document or not, whether you understand what is test plan, right? Those things they want to check. What is the difference between test progress report and test summary report? So both are different thing. Test progress report is while you're doing the testing, you are sending that test progress report. That okay. For example, let's say if your lead or dev lead, like they're asking, send me the test process report, progress report. So you'll say, okay, today we have completed 30% of the test execution and remaining 70 we will be doing in the next 2 days, something like that. So that is called test progress report. Or maybe you can explain that other things about that. Okay, we executed 60 test cases, there is two defect we got, one defect is still under analysis. That is called test progress report. Whereas test summary report is once you complete the whole testing, right? You then send a test summary report about how many test cases written, how many executed, how many defect you found, what kind of high priority and low priority, how many high priority defect you got, how many low priority defect you got, how many defects are resolved and how many defect is covered in this release, how many defect is deferred for the next release, something like that. That is called test summary report, where you are summarizing your testing activity. Okay. And then which mistakes do testers tend to do? So this is a good question. So basically they want to know that what challenges you face or what kind of mistakes even the test engineer can do, right? So it's a good question. Actually, it's a good question. So one of the mistake which we can do, which we should not do, but okay, it's happening, right? So failure to communicate. Sometimes we get the defect, but we are not communicating it in the right way, right? Or you are delaying on the representing those defects. So that is also failure on the communication side. Being afraid of asking questions. Sometimes there are requirements, right? And it's not clear. But maybe if you're shying away on asking question, if you think that um, how I can ask this kind of silly question, or whether what other people will think if I ask this kind of question, right? So it's like it's also a mistake. We should not, worry about, um, whether what other people will think. If you have a doubt, you should ask. Okay. Before begin testing, before understanding the scope, so that may be a kind of mistake. And some other mistakes. It's mentioned here. I'll share you later on. If you reported a defect to a developer and he rejected it, what shall you do? That's the question. So communicate with them, show them the example. Just a minute, hold on, guys. Okay, so these are the common uh, mistakes sorry, these are related to like when you are reporting a defect, right? What are the things you should do? You should show the example, reproducible steps, what kind of environment you are using. Um, Once the communication is done, maybe it's not a defect, right? So it, it is all depends on the communication, right? And the um, what conclusion you both have or the whole team have to what to do with that developer, what to do with that defect. Okay. So based on that, there will be a conclusion. It's like this. What is the difference between a mistake, defect, and failure? I'm not going into that. Generally, this is not a good question because there is a very thin line between these three things, and it's very non-technical thing. You know that what is the difference between mistake and defect? I don't think it's a good question. I'm not covering it, but as a theoretical knowledge, you may read it. What are the most important component of defect report? So yes, that's a good question. That you should have title of your defect, step to reproduce, expected, what was expected, what is actual, what is the priority of the defect. So generally, tester alone cannot decide the priority. They should talk with the business analyst. They should talk about whoever is, know about that functionality well, right? And you should talk with the product people also that okay, what should be the priority, or maybe they will decide the priority. Priority is more of related to how soon we want to resolve the defect, right? It's like this. What is the priority of resolving it, right? That is related to defect priority. Attach screenshot or video as an evidence, right? So those will be the part of defect reporting. Risk-based testing, theoretical question, guys. Read it once you get this talk. Alpha and beta testing, good question. So they want to check whether you understand what is alpha testing, what is beta testing. So both are a type of user acceptance testing, and alpha testing is performed at the developing organization site, not by the development team, but by potential or existing customer. So customer coming to your company, let's say you are developing a software. So customer or the real user will come to your company, and in front of them, right? In front of them, um, you are performing testing, right? Or maybe you give them also the access to do the testing, right? That will be alpha testing. But beta testing is something different. So beta testing is performed by potential or existing customer, and they have full freedom to do on their own at their own location, right? So beta testing is when you're the real user is checking it, right, by their own. It's like this, right? Theoretical thing, and read about it. So there should be test independence. Test independence means um, you have a independent testing team, and you make your own test cases, right? It's not like that you will be creating the test cases only what developer is saying based on that. It's not like that. Test independence means like independent tester uh, from a vendor. They are also doing the testing. Let's say they can also perform it, or an independent tester. So what is the benefit? It is included here. If you do, you follow the test independence, right? So you understand the requirement, design and everything, and then you're developing your cases and you're executing it, right? It's called test independence. Test technique and testing tools, both are different things, right? Tools are related to like what kind of tool you are using for the test management, automation tool, performance testing tool. Whereas techniques are related to actual testing, like white box testing, black box testing, how you perform it, right? Those are called test techniques. Random monkey testing, read about it. I'm not going through this. Negative and positive testing. So negative testing you do when putting invalid input, or you're going in a flow which generally user is not follow that kind of flow, test flow, right? And you do purposefully you are making some mistake so that you will find some error, you will find some defect, right? So those kind of thing are invalid, or sorry, it's a negative testing, right? Whereas positive testing is the flow that okay, this will you will put some input and you're expecting that this kind of output should come. That is a positive flow testing. Decision table, theoretical question, but you should know what is decision table. So decision tables are made of conditions and the expected result, right? So, and there are rules, right? So there will be multiple conditions, there are different rules, and once you know follow the rules and there are different conditions, there will be different actions. So same example, let's say if I say to vote in India, the age should be greater than 18 and less than 120, right? So you may have different, so there are rules, right? Rule, what is rule? Rule is age related rule. Age should be greater than 18, right? That is one rule. And it should be less than 120, right? One rule. Second rule is nationality. Nationality should, like, whether you are Indian or not. So that is a question. Then, so that's it. Let's say there are two rules, right? And then there will be actions. So actions, so I'll talk about it. So there will be combination then, right? So whether it's true or not, nationality is true or not. So based on that, answer is final action is allowed, right? So final action is also like you have to decide, okay, allow vote, right? So let's say another example is here I'm taking. Let's say age is not greater than 18, right? So there it's less than 18, and nationality is Indian, right? But still they will not allow vote, correct? So that will be not allow because you're not under the age, right? Another example is, so there will be combination, right? Let's say you are within the range of the age, but you are not Indian, let's say, then we will not allow the for the voting part, correct? So there will be combinations, right? So this is called decision table. This is called decision table. When you have different rules and based on that you take different action. So it's better to create decision table so that you will not miss any particular flow or particular combination. Okay. What is waterfall model? It's an old question and you should know, but it's an interesting question. So you should know about waterfall model, how it works, advantages of it, disadvantages of this. What is V model? You should read it. What are the best practices for writing test cases? This is a good question, and generally 0 to 4 year experienced, right, professional. For them, um, interviewer ask this kind of questions. Okay, so I'm not giving the answer. Just read it, understand it. That what are the best practices while you are writing the test cases. But this point is important that you should have proper test description, data, expected result, precondition, post condition, okay, those things. You should update your cases if there is a change, right? Naming convention should be good. Yes. What is test suite? So test suite is a group of test cases. Simple. Test suite is group of test cases. Okay. So there may be different kind of test suite, like say smoke test suite, sanity cases, or regression test suite, right? Test environment. So test environment is like a setup of software and hardware, uh, you know, which you require for your testing, right? So a simple example is you may have your development environment, QA environment, production environment, stage environment for the testing. But those environments are, you know, obviously has some, proper resources. It has its own database, hardware, software setup, correct? The memory. Uh, um, Production generally has, higher configuration, right? Whereas your dev environment or the QA environment may not have the same kind of what we say infrastructure as your production environment has, right? But you should know, as a test engineer, you should know what kind of environment you are using. What is the difference between build and release? I'm not going into that. But release is the final release. Means you are uh, having all the things in place and then you're releasing your application, right? For the final testing, right? That is called release. But build is like it may be a sub part or the module which you want to release, right? So intermediate builds you can get for a feature, or you can get an intermediate build for a defect fix, right? So that those are called build, right? But the build, when it is finalized, right, releasable build will become a final release. It's like this. What is test data? You can read about it. Like what is test data? So test data are whatever input you need while you are executing your test cases. That is called test data. You're using those test data. So for example, this is test data. This 17, 18, 19, right? This is also a test data that you are using during your test cases, during your test execution. What is the difference between quality control and quality insurance? Assurance, both are different things. Okay. Read about it. You should know it. Generally, we mix it about the QA and QC, but both are different things. Quality assurance is more of related to process, following the right process, creating the right process, monitoring the process. That is quality assurance. Whereas quality control is including more on testing activities, right? Writing the test cases, it's a part of quality control. So what I'm saying is maybe you are not agree with me, but that's the right thing. Writing the test cases is a part of quality control, not quality assurance. Okay. In simple word, we generally use QA everywhere. We use quality assurance word, right? But that's not the real thing. Quality assurance is more of related to process, whereas quality control is more of related to different activities which we perform during the uh, testing part. Okay, that's it, guys, for today.